Imagine, there are lots of doors. They're all the same shape, the same size, the same color, the same texture. There's no way to distinguish between them at all, and there's an infinite number of these said doors. But one of the doors definitely has some vestige of being open. If you open and close it many times, those traces become more apparent. Finding those traces and progressing beyond, that is my stand. This is how Yasuo describes her stand, Paisley Park. And if that description sounds a bit confusing or a little convoluted, it is. The stand itself seems way more complicated than it actually ends up being. I honestly don't blame anyone for being confused by this stand given its ass-backwards description. So, without further ado, let's get right into this. Before we get into the stand, let's talk about its user, Yasuo. She's a 19-year-old university student who has a very innocent nature and she always follows her instincts. She also has a very adorable, naive quirk, and her kindness is unmatched in any other part of JoJo as well, maybe up there with George Joestar. She appears to have developed these traits due to her household situation and what appears to be the lack of a maternal figure in her life, or at least the resentment of her own mother's lifestyle. She appears to develop these motherly traits in herself. We see these traits shine through when she's willing to go along with Josuke and help him learn his true identity, even though she just met him and he's a complete stranger that she found buried halfway in the ground. Or also when we see her mother or baby Tsurugi, even after he kidnapped her and put her through the mind break that was Paper Moon.
This arc is like a goddamn horror movie. It is terrifying. And she has no idea anything with stands or anything. This is her first experience with stands, and this is what it is.
Fucking Paper Moon. Ugh. Though it appears as JoJolion goes on, Yasuo finds herself becoming more and more independent from her upbringing, and more capable in her abilities. With this, the development of her growth, she also learns to understand her stand, Paisley Park, more. Speaking of Paisley Park is a dimensional shifting stand with a humanoid appearance at first. Its design is a map covering a whole person's body. It also has two rounded eyes that stay present even when Paisley Park shifts from her humanoid form. In appearance, it seems to be a direct reflection of Yasuo as a person, having her hair and being her shadow and all. Its stats are no destructive power or speed defined, A in range, A in durability, D in precision, and C in developmental potential. The reference of Paisley Park in general is a Prince song by the same name. Paisley Park is a song about a utopian place where anyone can go to feel good in their heart, despite the chaos of the world. From there, they can stay upon the right path, which will lead them to happiness within Paisley Park, which is both reflected in Yasuo's growth as a character and the ability of the stand. Speaking of which, let's get into Paisley Park's ability. So this ability can be referred to as guidance, which by textbook definition is pretty fitting given what it does. Paisley Park, in short, is an omnipresent stand which is able to predict upcoming events. And if they are harmful to Yasuo, or anyone close to Yasuo, it will then prompt Yasuo with options to get them out of the situation. Basically, it takes the situation in its present and looks for the corresponding answers to that problem. And like many other problems in reality, there are many solutions to one problem. And every option that Paisley Park offers will definitely be used to find a solution in a upcoming issue, even if the presented object doesn't seem to apply at all. Examples of which being the flashlight when it helps Yasuo discover that the car is open because of the missing key, or the banana, which appeared to be used to trip up Doobie-Wa's stand user, but it actually was just a distraction to allow Paper Moon, King, to use its ability. No matter what, the object will play into a solution for an issue. Though the real confusion comes from the analogy I presented at the beginning of the video. This is directly from JoJolion. And, well, it's not entirely wrong, it mainly describes the sub-ability of Paisley Park. So the door analogy only comes up, and what confuses many people about it is it's when the user of Paisley Park directly prompts it to go and seek out any information that the user chooses. It will take the most helpful and direct route, which is shown in the Blue Hawaii arc. When it doesn't go to the dental records, it goes directly to the police records, which has dental files on it. Though this ability does require Yasuo to give Paisley Park a thing to look for, like a name, a person, anything, which usually goes against its more automatic functions. Some other side abilities that this stand has is electronic manipulation, which allows Paisley Park to project itself onto any electronic device like a phone or a tablet, and this is also used to gather data, like it ejects itself into the car computer, the GPS of the computer, so they can get the data, or it gets into the police evidence server. It also has the ability to make itself physical or make itself intangible, so it's able to climb a person as if it was a shadow casted upon them without them noticing, and then examine their person, like what do they have on them. Though due to its incredibly weak strength nature, its non-destructive power, it can't really do anything too damage-wise while in its shadow or in its humanoid form. So yes, in simple, Paisley Park is mainly a stand about gathering information, whether it be under the control of its user or by itself, because it acts independently of Yasuo. But since JoJo Leon is still going on, there's still possibility that Paisley Park will develop more as a stand, since it has a seen developmental potential. And I wouldn't be surprised if it changes and grows as it goes on, because Yasuo is a Hirose, which is Koichi's last name from the original universe. So, she might carry some of Koichi's traits since she's stepping in. She isn't the exact replacement for Koichi, like, say, Diego and Jonathan were, or Diego and Johnny were Dio and Jonathan. I wouldn't be surprised that if her stand evolves much like Echo's, is it maybe we get more powers for Paisley Park. Maybe she gets an actual offensive ability. If you have any ideas, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. But as I view it, Paisley Park is much the mother that Yasuo needed in her life. It's a reflection of her own motherly side, her own traits, and that's is why it appears as a much taller, much more like feminine version of Yasuo. It always allows Yasuo the ability of freedom of choice. She doesn't have to do what Paisley Park says. It's only trying to lead her in the correct direction. And Yasuo is slowly finding her own Paisley Park within herself. And you can find your own Paisley Park too if you go to funimation.com/show/Shimonetta. A boring world where the concept of dirty jokes doesn't exist. Or you can go on to Amazon.com right now and you can look up Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist, and purchase your copy there and get 2-day shipping if you have Amazon Prime. If you... Fuck it, just do it. Do it already. Jesus. Fuck.